What would you do if the person your company humiliated turned out to be the one who could save it? Imagine spending years quietly working on an idea that could change everything, only to be ignored, rejected, and suspended. Then one day, the billionaire owner walks into the boardroom, holds up your plan, and asks one question that leaves every executive speechless: who made this plan? What happens next is a powerful story about kindness, perseverance, second chances, and the incredible rewards of never giving up on doing the right thing. Before we begin, if stories like this inspire you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who could use a little hope today, and let us know in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? We'd love to read your story. Now, grab a comfortable seat, and let's get started with today's unforgettable story. The billionaire's voice echoed across the silent boardroom, sharp enough to stop every whispered conversation. The executives who had entered the room with confidence now avoided eye contact. One by one, they lowered their heads, pretending to study the papers in front of them. The atmosphere felt heavy, as though everyone already knew the answer but hoped someone else would say it first. Finally, the head of human resources took a deep breath and spoke in a trembling voice. "Sir, the plan was created by the employee we suspended last month." The billionaire's expression hardened. "The single father?" he asked quietly. "Yes, sir." For several long seconds, no one moved. Then he asked one question that would change the future of the company forever. Why would anyone suspend the men who just saved this business? A few weeks earlier, life looked completely different for Daniel Brooks. Every weekday began long before sunrise inside a small apartment on the edge of Columbus, Ohio. His alarm rang at 4:45 every morning, but most days he was already awake. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, often slipped into his room after waking from bad dreams. Daniel never complained. He simply smiled, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and reminded himself that these quiet moments mattered more than anything money could buy. After making breakfast, Daniel packed Lily's lunch with care. Every lunchbox contained a handwritten note. Sometimes it said, "Be brave." Other times it read, "Keep smiling," or "Dad loves you more than the stars." Lily collected every note inside a colorful shoebox beside her bed. She believed they were tiny treasures. Daniel believed they reminded her she would never face the world alone. Being a single father had never been part of Daniel's plan. 5 years earlier, he had lost his wife after a sudden illness, leaving him heartbroken and terrified of raising their daughter alone. There were nights when he questioned whether he was doing enough. There were mornings when exhaustion followed him like a shadow. But every time Lily smiled, he found another reason to keep going. She became his greatest responsibility and his greatest inspiration. Daniel worked as an operations analyst at Sterling Dynamics, one of the country's largest logistics companies. His job wasn't glamorous. Most people barely noticed him. While louder employees fought for promotions and recognition, Daniel quietly focused on solving problems. He believed every system could be improved if someone cared enough to study it. During lunch breaks, after work, and late at night once Lily was asleep, Daniel spent countless hours developing a completely new scheduling system. No manager had assigned him the project. Nobody expected it. He simply noticed that the company's outdated software wasted thousands of hours every month and made employees' jobs harder than they needed to be. His apartment slowly transformed into a tiny planning room. Charts covered the walls. Colorful sticky notes stretched across the dining table. His laptop overflowed with spreadsheets, diagrams, and handwritten ideas. Sometimes Lily sat beside him, carefully placing sticky notes wherever her father pointed. "Does this one go here?" she would ask. Daniel smiled warmly. "Perfect." She giggled with pride. "Then I'm helping build something important." "You absolutely are," he always replied. Those evenings became their favorite routine. Daniel wasn't just building software. He was teaching his daughter that meaningful work begins with caring enough to make things better. Months passed before Daniel finally believed his idea was ready. Carrying a folder filled with research, charts, and projections, he walked into his manager's office with quiet confidence. He explained how the new system could reduce delays, improve employee schedules, and save the company millions of dollars every year. His manager barely looked up from his computer. "This is interesting," he said without enthusiasm. Daniel waited hopefully. Then came 4 words that instantly crushed his excitement. "Stay in your lane, Daniel." The meeting ended almost as quickly as it had begun. Daniel walked back to his desk holding the same folder he had carried in, except now it felt much heavier. Around him, co-workers continued their conversations without noticing the disappointment on his face. For a moment, he wondered if maybe his manager was right. Maybe his idea wasn't special after all. That evening, he quietly placed the folder on the kitchen table and stared at it while Lily colored pictures nearby. He didn't know it yet, but the decision he made next, and the encouragement he was about to receive from the person he loved most, would begin a journey that none of them could have imagined. Daniel sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at the thick folder as if it held the answer to every question in his life. The pages inside represented nearly 3 years of late nights, early mornings, and countless sacrifices. He had missed movies, turned down vacations, and stayed awake long after Lily had gone to bed, all because he believed his idea could genuinely help people. Now, after hearing his manager tell him to stay in your lane, doubt crept into his mind for the first time. Maybe he had aimed too high. Maybe ordinary employees weren't supposed to dream beyond their job descriptions. As he reached for the folder to put it away, Lily looked up from her coloring book and noticed the sadness on his face. Children often recognize emotions adults try hard to hide, and she knew something wasn't right. Lily climbed into the chair beside her father and gently touched the folder. "Is this your big idea for work?" she asked with innocent curiosity. Daniel nodded, forcing a small smile. "It is." She looked at him for a moment before asking another question. "Then why do you look sad?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to burden his daughter with adult problems, but he also believed in being honest. "Sometimes people don't believe in your ideas," he said softly. Lily thought about his words before smiling. "But you always tell me that if something can help people, we should never stop trying." Her simple sentence stopped him in his tracks. It was his own advice, spoken back to him by the little girl who listened to every lesson he taught. At that moment, Daniel realized he couldn't give up simply because one person had dismissed his work. The following morning, Daniel learned that Sterling Dynamics was launching its annual Employee Innovation Challenge. Every worker, regardless of position, could submit ideas directly to senior leadership. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for. His manager didn't seem excited when Daniel mentioned entering the competition, but Daniel no longer needed anyone's permission to believe in himself. That evening, he carefully reviewed every page of his proposal, corrected tiny mistakes, added clearer explanations, and clicked the submit button. As the confirmation email appeared on his screen, Lily cheered from the couch as if her father had already won. Daniel laughed for the first time in days. Whether he received recognition or not, he felt proud that he had at least given his dream a chance. 2 weeks passed without any news. Daniel continued working as usual, refusing to let the waiting distract him. Then, late one Friday afternoon, an email finally appeared in his inbox. His heart raced as he opened it. The message was painfully short. It thanked him for participating and informed him that his proposal had not been selected for further review. There were no comments explaining why. No suggestions for improvement. No invitation to discuss the idea. Just a polite rejection. Daniel stared at the screen for several minutes before quietly closing his laptop. Disappointment settled over him like a heavy rain cloud, but he reminded himself that rejection didn't erase the years of effort he had invested. Even so, deep inside, he couldn't help wondering if anyone had actually read his proposal at all. Life moved on, and Daniel focused on the responsibilities waiting for him at home. Bills still needed to be paid. Lily still needed help with homework. Dinner still had to be cooked every evening. He refused to let one disappointing email change the way he treated the people who depended on him. Every morning, he packed Lily's lunch with another handwritten note. Every evening, they read bedtime stories together, laughing at funny characters and imagining exciting adventures. To Lily, her father remained the strongest person in the world. She never saw the quiet worries that kept him awake after she had fallen asleep. Daniel carried those burdens alone because he wanted her childhood to remain filled with hope instead of fear. Just when Daniel believed the worst was behind him, an unexpected email from Human Resources appeared in his inbox asking him to report to a meeting the next morning. He assumed it involved a routine company matter, but the moment he entered the conference room, he sensed something was wrong. His department manager sat silently beside an HR representative. A printed copy of Daniel's proposal rested on the table between them. Without much discussion, they informed him that portions of the software had been accessed using company computers during lunch breaks. Although Daniel explained that nearly all the work had been completed at home on his own time, they insisted he had violated internal policy. Before he could fully defend himself, they placed him on immediate suspension pending further review. Carrying a small cardboard box through the parking lot, Daniel wondered how everything he had worked so hard to build had fallen apart so quickly. That evening, Daniel walked into his apartment carrying the same cardboard box that so many employees dreaded taking home. Lily noticed it immediately but didn't ask difficult questions. She simply wrapped her arms around him and smiled. "Does this mean we get to have dinner together earlier?" she asked. Daniel forced a smile and nodded. "Looks like we do." He refused to let his daughter see the fear hidden behind his calm expression. Over the following weeks, he searched everywhere for another job. He updated his resume, attended interviews, and sent out dozens of applications. Some employers never replied. Others politely chose someone else. Savings slowly disappeared, and every dollar became important. Yet Daniel never stopped writing little notes for Lily's lunchbox. He believed that even when life became uncertain, love should never feel uncertain. While Daniel struggled to keep his small family afloat, Sterling Dynamics faced the biggest crisis in its history. A rival company introduced a faster and more efficient delivery system, attracting many of Sterling's largest customers. Delays increased across the country, complaints flooded customer service lines, and investors demanded immediate answers. Emergency meetings filled the executive calendar, but every expensive consultant offered the same ordinary solutions that failed to solve the real problem. Finally, the company's founder and majority owner, billionaire Charles Whitmore, returned from an overseas business trip. Unlike everyone else, Charles wasn't interested in excuses. He wanted facts. He instructed his leadership team to bring him every innovation proposal submitted during the previous year, believing that sometimes the best solutions already existed inside the company. Late that evening, Charles sat alone in his office reviewing dozens of rejected ideas. Most offered small improvements, but one proposal immediately captured his attention. Its detailed research, realistic cost analysis, employee-focused approach, and practical implementation plans stood out from everything else. Every page demonstrated careful thinking and genuine concern for both workers and customers. Charles continued reading until he reached the final page, where one name appeared beneath the signature, Daniel Brooks. Curious, he asked his assistant to arrange a meeting with the employee the following morning. The assistant hesitated before quietly explaining that Daniel had been suspended several weeks earlier. Charles looked up in disbelief. "Suspended," he repeated. "For what?" After hearing the explanation, he slowly closed the folder and said, "Tomorrow morning, every executive involved in that decision will meet me in the boardroom." The next morning, silence filled the executive conference room. Charles placed Daniel's proposal in the center of the polished table and looked around at the leadership team. "Who made this plan?" he asked. No one answered. Finally, the HR director admitted, "The employee we suspended." Charles folded his hands and spoke calmly, but every word carried enormous weight. "You suspended the one person who spent years solving problems nobody else bothered to solve. Did anyone ask why he built this system? Did anyone thank him for caring enough to improve the company? Or did you simply see policy before you saw potential?" No one could answer. Charles immediately instructed his assistant to contact Daniel and invite him back, not for another disciplinary meeting, but for a conversation. When Daniel received the unexpected phone call, he thought someone was playing a prank. After a moment of hesitation, he accepted the invitation. The next day, he walked back into Sterling Dynamics with mixed emotions. Charles greeted him personally, shook his hand, and apologized for what had happened. Then he spent nearly 2 hours listening as Daniel explained every detail of the scheduling system he had designed. Daniel didn't talk about making executives richer. Instead, he explained how warehouse employees could spend more evenings with their families, how drivers could avoid unnecessary overtime, and how customers would receive better service. Charles realized that Daniel's greatest strength wasn't his intelligence alone. It was his compassion.